back to the next session, whereby we are continuing with this discussion on mental health in the midst of a pandemic, and so that we can be able to get now deeper into it. Daktari, you've been locked. You've become one of those who have been affected by the pandemic regulations, the restrictions, the travel bans, and everything. You've been locked in Kenya for quite some time now. Now you can't visit your wife, you can't visit your children, you're not working like you're supposed to do, and you're here, you're in the midst of it. Tell us something about it. How did it start up? How did it come to be that you found yourself in the midst of all this and lockdown?
My lifestyle is very, very interesting in Kenya because I'm normally here for about 4 months. And then I travel back to US for another 4 months, and then come back 4 months. So I'm back and forth.
So it's half-half.
It's half-half.
You try to divide us.
Correct.
The Kenyan home and the US home.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm a child of two worlds. When I'm here, I'm saying I'm going home. When I'm in US, I'm saying I'm going home.
Okay.
I have my family in US. The entire family, my wife, my children, my grandchildren are in US. I was scheduled to go back to US in February, but I lost my mother around that time, and therefore everything changed. Then I was scheduled to go in May, but just before, I just found myself around March, the lockdown comes, and the next thing that there were no flights at all going to US. To make it matter worse, we are told by the media and by the so-called specialists or advisors that the older people are affected by the coronavirus.
And you're one of the older
and
people?
I'm one of the old people, 60 plus, and I need to stay indoor. So I'm wondering, should I be in the office the whole time, or should I have a good excuse now to tell my staff, I don't need to be here the whole day. Remember mode, I need to go home. So I'm only for a few minutes and then I go back home. But staying home, it can be very, very, also very hard. Being locked down, it means that you have restrictions and you have things that you were doing, normal circumstances that you are not doing them. There is a tendency, and it has affected me in one way or the other, of loneliness. I'm the kind of a person who is a very social person. I can spend my evenings with friends, but now I find myself that I'm not going anywhere. You cannot visit your friends because you are creating this, even though you are comfortable, you don't want to create anxiety to the people that you are visiting. So as much as I love my friends and as much they love me and they want us to get together, it cannot happen because you don't want to create that anxiety. So finally I find myself stuck in that indoor, and I'm home most of the time. And there are times it can be lonely. But because of my understanding of whom I am, I can easily overcome that. I can entertain myself in other things. I am busy teaching in US. I am online doing a lot of things. But also give me the opportunity to talk to my family all the time. When I wake up at 3 a.m., I have people to talk to when everybody else is sleeping. But it can be lonely. In fact, last Sunday, I was thinking it was Father's Day.
And your dad is here.
And dad is home. And the calls are coming from my children, and I'm home alone. And I'm thinking, if I were home, all my kids would be celebrating their dad.
The cakes and everything.
Yeah, the cakes and the gifts and everything and a good meal.
The joy, the music.
And here I'm just making my 2 eggs.
And you can't even visit your own father.
And I cannot visit.
And he's just a kilometer, 2 kilometers
I cannot, because I don't want to create that anxiety. Yeah, and even if I go, I want to stay very far from him.
And he wants to hug you.
Exactly. So I end up sometimes to be alone. It can be lonely. What do I do? Take a walk. I can walk 10 kilometers and back.
When you're lonely.
When I'm lonely, I have to look for a way to compensate that. I don't want to sit home and get lonely. So I have to entertain myself. If I'm not reading, I'm not writing, and most of the time preparing message. I've been teaching the book of Ephesians throughout. It has given me the opportunity to do so, but you still need that change.
You still need it. You still need the physical.
I do a lot of exercises, which is very, very important. Make your body physical. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it is easy to find yourself in a depression.
And now you're alone in the house. Nobody else. It's just you and your 2 eggs.
Correct.
Will you just be eating eggs all through? I mean, they are not, because the restaurants are closed,
Yes.
the hotels are closed.
Yeah.
For the last years that you can remember, when your mom was cooking for you,
Yeah.
then your wife started cooking for you, and now you are alone.
Right.
I think you'll just be eating to it until this lockdown is
I'm
over.
not Mchungaji, I'm a very good cook. It's only that I am lazy to cook for one person, but I'm a very good cook.
How many? Okay, I don't want to ask how many Kikuyu women know how to cook.
I don't know.
There are so many, but I think you're one of the many.
If you ask my kids today, whenever I'm in US for their birthdays, whether they would like to go out or dad to cook, often they will choose. I never ask that question because they will choose dad to cook. I come up with very good recipes that I can. If you tell me to give you the recipe, I can. But I'm very creative.
But
It's not that I'm
lazy now
lazy.
when it comes to
Yeah,
cooking.
but I make sure the house has got two things: has got eggs and has got fish. So those two I can easily do. Then my
No
sister.
sukumas, no kales, no cabbage.
That's what I had to go back to my sister, back at Karatina, and ask them make some skumas, and I take home with me, put in the fridge.
Wow.
So-
No, I'm just imagining now, you've been locked from going back to your family and back to your work, and you can't even go to Nairobi.
I can.
You can't even visit Mombasa. We are all on the lockdown.
Correct.
Now, that is the situation that is now that has caught up with so many people.
Correct.
We have colleagues. I have colleagues, ministers who have been locked up from their places of work.
Mm.
Maybe they were in the other side of the country, in Kiambu, in Nairobi, and they're supposed to be working here and they cannot access their workplaces. Some are here, they cannot access their families.
Correct.
And so many other people. There is somebody who was going for business, and then the presidential directive came in and they were locked up.
Correct.
And maybe the family does not believe that indeed it happened when they were in Nairobi. So these are some of the things that have really happened and hit us with this pandemic.
Correct.
From a psychological point of view, do you think that this pandemic is going to bring in loads and loads of psychological issues?
Oh, yes. The COVID-19 has caused, not just in Kenya, but universal psychological impact by causing a mass hysteria, economic burden, and financial losses. We all know this.
Yes, yes.
And the huge mass fear of COVID-19. In fact, one of the World Health Organization director, he called it coronaphobia.
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 Uh-huh.
Coronaphobia, it is the fear of corona. We know what it is.
Yes.
Phobia is this fear,
The fear. Yes.
itself, and therefore the coronaphobia has generated a major or a lot of psychiatric manifestations across the different strata, across the different world, the society. It is not only one area that is affected. The whole idea of quarantine to combat the COVID-19, which has been applied in nationwide lockdowns, it has produced acute panic, anxiety, obsessive behaviors, hoarding. How many people go to the store and they are buying everything? The other day you go to Naivas or to all these supermarkets, you find no toilet papers, no sanitizers, nothing.
And when it started, actually, I think everybody was guilt about it.
Exactly.
We went into the shops and you're buying, because you've been told everybody is going to stay indoors.
Exactly.
Everybody is not going to go anywhere without
This is
permission.
what we call coronaphobia.
Okay.
This is what we call coronaphobia. That is, we have created this fear in people, and I'm not trying to undermine the effect and the severeness of the disease.
Yes.
But we have created in human mind this fear, which has implicated more and generated more mental health concerns. You go to the store, you find somebody carrying the whole box of sanitizers, not thinking about other people.
Is that behavior a sign of a mental issue or a psychological issue?
It starts before something is. It is a psychological issue, but we cannot call it a mental illness.
Okay.
A mental illness is a repeated behavior for several times occurring every single time.
Over a long time.
Over a long time period. That way, we can be able to group it under what we call the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistics Measure. But there is also this fear, and this phobia, we are calling it coronaphobia, that people make people now to think of how they can survive by themselves.
Yeah.
In this, when we started creating this kind of obsessive behavior, and obsessive behavior is a behavior, something that you want to continually do it. Now, look, washing our hands all the time is an obsessive behavior.
Yeah, actually, everybody just feels like, okay, I need to wash my hands.
All the time.
You're washing your hands from one store to the other. When
Correct.
you get home, you're just touching everything and washing your hands.
Right.
So, can it be that washing hands and that extreme cleanliness and watching of hygiene, can it just generate now the obsessive disorders in some people later on?
Let alone it can. It can. It's an environment. It can eventually continue now to, and we'll talk more when we start talking about children, how this especially will affect children in their formative stages of their development. But it can happen. I'm not saying washing hands. It is not a psychology. It is not a mental illness. It's a behavior that is so obsessive you want to do it all the time.
Yes.
But as I say, this lockdown, this coronaphobia, that really has really not only caused that hoarding, but also the paranoia. Every time we are thinking about it,
Being infected,
we are paranoid with it all the time.
Yes.
And in fact, it is also leading to depression. And eventually, it is going to lead to what we call post-traumatic stress disorder in the long run.
Okay, I think that's really not a very good one, but considering that we may come out of this, what I'm getting, we may come out of this corona pandemic situation from all the restrictions and the regulations, but find ourselves into another pit of mental illnesses, mental issues, if we don't take care of them now.
It is very possible. It is very possible, Chugaji. We have talked about the coronaphobia,
Yes.
which is really dictating the whole idea of the fear,
Yes.
which is really causing this panic, anxiety, obsessive behavior, hoarding, paranoia, depression, and eventually leading to what we call PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. But also remember, it's not only how is this being fueled to people's mind. These have been fueled by, again, the director of the World Health Organization calling it infodemic. Infodemic, it means is information that we are gathering from the media, from the Facebook. This information that is coming from everybody, because Twitter, everywhere, when they get the social media, when they get the opportunity to make profit, they use something that is not scientifically proved. And we, as the lay people, we are Googling everything,
and we
are consuming all this information. And some of the information, for sure, they are not helpful at all. They are not scientific, but they are creative. That is what is called it. We are calling it infodemic, because it is. We are taking all this information for ourselves.
Okay.
But it's not helping. Watching too much news can also be damaging. By this information we are getting, we must be able to be discriminative, to know. I get all these things in my WhatsApp and I say, where are these coming from? What is the source? I need to know the source. If it's not scientific, I don't take it. I don't take it. It has to come from a credible person who has done research and data that can justify this. By this platform in the social media has created the coronaphobia to people. It is really magnified and messing up everything. And I'm not minimizing the effectiveness.
The effect of the
There is coronavirus.
Yes,
I'm serious about it.
It is there.
But then the fear and the coronaphobia that we have, it can be even more worse than the corona itself.
Okay, thank you. I think we have it up to there. We take another break, and then we can be able to continue from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.